Kathy here from Eclectic Images, and welcome to another scene in our Winter Wonderland series. So this one we're going to be using one of our ladies and creating a scene around her and making it look as wintry as we can. So I've picked Rosa because she's actually a back view, and I think that looks like she's hurrying home on a stormy day. And we've used some Willow in there and trying to make it look windblown. So the stamps that we're going to use are a little bit of Winter Branch again. We'll also use some Streetscape, Rosa of course, and the Willow. And then I've just picked a few little words out of a couple of the brush word sets. To do our colouring, as well as some Versafine inks, we're also going to be using the Unicolour markers. They're from Uniquely Creative here in Australia, and they have some stunning colours. I'm just going to bring in a colour chart for you to have a look at. Absolutely beautiful colours. So I've done, on our sample one, I've used a couple of the aqua and deep oceany coloured greens. So on our next one that I do to show you, I've picked another couple of colours. So we get to see something a little bit different and mix it up a bit. Okay, so on our card, I'm working on the cotton blend cardstock. And I've got to find my piece of cotton blend cardstock. Where have I buried it? Buried it on the desk here. There it is. There it is. So good. So good. Wasn't too far away. Okay, cotton blend. Cotton blend is a high cotton content card that's suitable for watercolouring. This is a 210 GSM because I'm not doing a lot of soaking of it. There is also a 300 GSM if you're going to do a lot more heavier applications of water. Okay, and just Matthew clunks away over there, but it's all right. We'll keep going. He didn't actually drop the headset. He just nearly did. So, using Versafine ink, we will ink up Rosa and stamp her first, and then we start to create our scene around her. So when you're building up a scene, you stamp first the things that you want to be in the foreground of it. Apart from silhouette stamps, they can be stamped later, like our Willow and Winter Branch going over the top of Rosa a little bit. That's stamped later, but all this other scenic stuff is stamped after her. So let's pop her down on our bit of card. Just shake a bit of a grot off the card. I'm actually stamping her on a little bit of an angle, so it looks even like she's leaning into the wind a bit. Look, it helps that she's sort of curving a bit that way anyway. So it just lends itself to it. So there's Rosa. And if I remember right, Rosa is actually the reverse view of Prilly's outfit. These stamps were designed by my sister when she was studying fashion design, and quite a few of the ladies are part of her final portfolio. So I'm very privileged to have them as stamps in our range, and they were actually part of the inspiration for starting Eclectic Images quite a few years ago now. What are we up to? 13, 14 years? Anyway, let's pop on a mask over Rosa. So this is where I've stamped her on a post-it note, a sticky post-it note pad. And I can cover her dress up with that, which means that we can then do our colouring around and it won't affect her. So the next thing we're going to do is stamp the Streetscape, which I usually do in browns, but I'm actually going to stick to the smoky grey in the Versafine today. I want everything looking very dull and grey. Now the Streetscape does have an up and a down. The upside of it has the tops of the tree branches and a little bit of clouds. So position that. I don't always put it up at the top of the card, sometimes it's lower down, but for this look I'm actually positioning it right at the top of the card. Push down nice and firmly, especially around where the mask is, because we want that building to come fairly close to her. That's excellent. Ink up again. So the stamp does look fabulous if you stamp it twice across the card. And it looks like you've got a street ducking away in there. So it looks like your buildings are all tucking away behind each other. Okay, so now we're going to put in some of our Willow, again in the grey. And we're going to be bringing it in on this angle, so we're creating this windswept look. And I want some of these fronds to actually go in behind her. So I'll stamp over the top, but because she's got the mask on, they'll go in behind. And we can even do some several generation stamping. So stamp it again. That's a bit loud, isn't it? Okay, very enthusiastic today. Okay, that to me looks bleak. Now we'll leave the mask on, Rosa, and do a little bit of our colouring. So I've just got the Versafine Sepia here and the Smoky Grey. So the Sepia, I'm going to do a little bit of colouring on the building, and I'm just going to start off on the mask that's over Rosa and just dab out a bit. I'm not doing accurate colouring at all, I'm just adding a hint of colour to it. And a hint down those tree trunks. So that's all, just a hint of brown in there, just so they don't look too stark. Which is strange when I've got a card that I'm trying to make it look very stark. Now grab our grey and black brush, just make sure it hasn't got too much black left on it. Ink up with grey, and we're going to start smudging in some grey. And I'm letting it be quite rough to create some texture for our ground. And also just the look of maybe that there's some puddles around, and then we're going to do some extra colouring around the edges, deepen it off a bit. Now I've chosen to use Versafine here. I often, when I'm doing these sort of scenes, use Versamagic, and one of the reasons for picking that for either Versafine or Versamagic for this background colouring is that I'm going to do some watercolouring over Rosa, and if any of my watercolouring smears outside of Rosa, this background's not going to move because your Versafine and your Versamagic are waterproof inks. So they dry with a waterproof finish. If I was doing something where I wanted it to react with water, so I wanted to be able to splash water on and get an effect from it, then I'd need to be using the Catherine Pooler inks or distress inks, distress oxides, something that's going to react with the water. But here I'm looking for not having these dull colours smearing in with the lovely colouring we're going to be doing on Rosa. I want that just looking dull and grungy, and I don't want it moving. So by using a permanent ink, it's going to sit there. Now we can peel our mask off, and you'll see that Rosa is popping out from that grey background. Now we could do her in dull colours as well, but I think the brilliance of having her stand out from those, and how many of us wear bright colours on dull days just to make ourselves feel a little bit better. So I've picked a burnt orange colour just to add some skin tone. Just make sure my water brush is nice and clean just by brushing it off on the scrap paper. So we've got a little bit of skin tone here around her neck. Now if it's a little bit strong, if you grab a paper towel and dab it off while it's still wet from your water brush, it'll just knock that colour back a little bit. There we go. And of course a little bit on her stockinged legs. Just going to pop a bit more water on that just to move it a little bit more. It's still a little bit dark for me. A bit orangey. But you can see the Versafine ink doesn't move at all as you're doing your blending. Okay, now let's get into some fun stuff with our clothes. So I'm going to be using a mixture of, what have I picked? An orange and a red, and also be using some of the Colour Blast shimmer pen in the clear, which is going to give some shine and shimmer there as well. So let's start working on her jacket and see how we go. I'll move that orange, burnt orange tone out of there so I don't get mixed up with which pens I'm grabbing. So we'll start off with some of our softer orange around here, and then these pens just blend beautifully with water. So I can just pick up that colour and move it out to where we want it. Now I'm going to come in with some of the red. Oh, this is going to look stunning, isn't it? And then blend it over that other colour. If I need to, just wipe my brush clean so I can come in and add some more blending. Now I can, with the shimmer marker, I can either bring it in and just do a wash of shimmer over the whole thing, but you can see it's moving that colour around a bit more, or we can actually pop a little bit on our mat, just pull a bit there and work from that with our water brush as we're doing our blending. So there's different ways that you can add just that little bit of sparkle. Let's do a bit on her hat. So we want it lighter in some areas. Pick up some sparkle. And then we're going to come in with the red. I think the trickiest thing about something like this is keeping track of what pen you've got in your hand at the time when you've had to do something. So pop some sparkle in there and give my brush a clean as I need to. Just waft over till that's all blended. Okay, let's work into her jacket a little bit more. So that's her jacket down to that point. So we can just work between those two colours and they're just going to blend so easily together. Now where's her other part of her jacket? That's just sneaking down the side there, isn't it? Now, so I'm looking, as I'm working, I'm looking for what would be more likely to be the highlighted areas. And you can see that we've got areas that have been given some shading as part of the stamp. So I'm going to pick that as a darker area. Pick up some of my shimmer. If I'm getting too much of the red flowing, I can just clean my brush off a bit. If I think it actually needs a little bit more, we can add a touch more in there. I'm aiming for an orange more than a yellow look, so I'm trying to get that red blending in with it so that we don't get it looking too yellowy. Now let's do her other sleeve. Highlight some areas, then come in with your deeper colour, give it some shadows and some drama. Like a bit of drama, don't we? Don't we? Sure. Just not on days when we're trying to film. So I'm just going over it and just touching it until it's blended to the point where I'm happy with it, and then I stop. Just bring a little bit more red in there. But look how easily they blend together. It's just beautiful. Right, now then, so I'm going to do her skirt mainly in the red. but there are still some highlight areas. So this area is going to be more of a highlight. And turn your card around so as you're working with your brushes, you're working the tip of the brush to the edge of the picture. If I try and colour this way, I'll go over my edges. I'm just softening that edge a bit so it doesn't dry too much as I'm going to apply some more colour. So I'm looking at this area being a highlight and this being more of a shadow. And just by picking up that little bit of metallic on my brush, just adds a beautiful little shimmer to it all. Right, let's turn our card around and work this side a bit. So where are we looking at highlights here? I think that's a contour down through there. Which means that this area here is more highlighted. And maybe just a little bit up there. I'm going to spin my card around so I'm butting up against that edge. So you can see we're getting some great transitions of colour in there. I'm going to spin my card around so I can work that again right up to those edges without going over my edges. Often when I'm doing colouring scenes with the ladies, I actually emboss them, which does make your colouring a little bit easier because you've got that embossed edge to butt up to. So when I've stamped with something flat like Versafine, I've suddenly got to be a lot more careful when I'm doing my colouring. Let's put a bit of red in there. So there's an underside to the skirt, so I am still going to put a little bit of the orangey colour in. So I want it fairly red but not completely red. Does that make sense? Just so that when we put red down here, it's creating a point of difference in the fabric, because that would definitely be shadowed under there. I might just give her red shoes. I think red shoes would make us all feel better on a winter's day, wouldn't they? Now I just think I want to deepen off the jacket a little bit, but it's looking pretty good. Let's just add a bit more red in there. A bit more of our yellow to, orangey yellow to blend into. That's better. So if you're not sure which way to get your blending to happen, just look at wherever your lines are. Like here we're working out from that point. Just look at so that you're going across where the two colours join, and that's going to blend them in together. So you can see here I've got a bit of a line there where the colours haven't blended, so if I just go across that, that's going to smooth that out. Gorgeous! Wow, doesn't that red stand out? That's magnificent. Now if I want, I'll put my lids on before I lose my containers. I mean, lose which lid goes on which pen. And I might just come in with the shimmer pen and just add a little bit more on that top of the jacket and her hat. Stop playing, Kathy. Right, time to do our next bit. So our next bit is going to be to come back in with Willow and Winter Branch with the black, the Versafine Onyx black, and add some, so this will become more background. We want to add a bit more foreground. Let's do the Winter Branch first so I can see where that's going. I don't want much of the Winter Branch, and I've got to try and pick fronds that again look like they're blowing in that direction. And we don't have to ink the whole stamp. So we can actually, I like this frond here, these edge ones, so I'm actually going to ink up part of the stamp and not ink up those fronds there. Now let's just position it over the card, see if that's going to work. And I'm going to come in with my rag and just take off if there's any ink where I don't want it. Cool, really cool. And maybe a little bit of the end of that one. So I love this stamp, but doing something like this, I'm going, oh, I could design another stamp that does this or this. And that's where the ideas start. Just bring in a little bit there. And now we're going to switch to the Willow. So I'm happy for some of this to go over the top of her. Did I clean that before with the grey? Let's just make sure I give it a good clean. Because I'm wanting to use part of it. I'm just seeing which of the fronds I want to use. No, I think I will use the end. Okay, let's bring that bit up to start with. Now I'm going to clean that again so that I can use more the side frond. So let's make sure we really wipe that off. And we're going to ink up these edge ones. So you can see how the depth we're creating by having the grey first and then the black. So I'm making sure that the black is further back so I don't actually fully cover up the grey. I'm going to keep that black open because we're just going to add a bit of extra shading with the black. And then I'll think about what little words we're going to use in. So let's just do a bit of a scruff with the black around the edge. So right on the edge of the card, but deepening it off, which is going to make that orange and red just stand out so much more. But I'm not going to do it on this side. We'll leave that just with the grey. Now, what words am I going to use? What did I use on this one? Dream, hope, and love. So that was a couple of words out of the wish set and one out of the believe set. I'd like to use the big words, but they're just not going to fit with the lady here. So it needs to be the small ones. Let's use them in a different order. So I'm going to stamp dream first. You can see this is me being indecisive about what I want to do. So dream in there. Love. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got. We'll move our markers to one side and lay these out. So I've got our aqua one and our red-orange one. So on this one I did put some flowers down the bottom, and then I decided I didn't really like that, so I've left it off this one and just leaving just the grey water puddled footpath sort of look. Yeah, water puddled footpath. Okay, so I hope you like that. I thought of putting some highlights in on some of the willow branches, but then thought, no, let's leave it just grey and grungy, and that way the main highlight is that beautiful colour in her dress. So that's poor Rosa hurrying home on a wet afternoon. Hope you enjoyed that, and we hope to see you again soon for a bit more crafting with Kathy. Thank you for watching.